Imagine two people. They grow up in the same city, attend the same schools, graduate from the same university, land similar jobs, and earn exactly the same salary. If you met them at the beginning of their careers, you would probably believe they were destined for the same future. For years, their lives seem almost identical. They rent similar apartments, drive similar cars, wear similar clothes, take vacations at the same time. Even their bank accounts look nearly the same every payday. Then something begins to change. Not overnight, not after a lucky investment, not because one suddenly becomes a genius. The change is so small that almost nobody notices it. 10 years later, one has built financial freedom. The other is still living from paycheck to paycheck. What happened? Most people immediately search for obvious answers. Maybe one earned more. Maybe one was luckier. Maybe one inherited money. Maybe one discovered the perfect investment. But what if none of those were true? What if wealth has never been created by one extraordinary decision, but by thousands of ordinary ones? That question brought Atlas to one of the oldest legends ever recorded. Hidden beneath forgotten mountains, far beyond the maps of ancient kingdoms, lies a place known only as the Temple of Decisions. Unlike every treasure Atlas had searched for before, this temple contained no gold, no jewels, no priceless artifacts. Only a single promise carved into weathered stone. The greatest fortunes are created long before anyone notices them. Atlas stepped inside. The air was silent. Dust floated through narrow beams of sunlight. Ancient gears rested motionless beneath towering stone walls. At the center of the temple, an enormous balance stood waiting. One side overflowed with gold. The other held only a small stone engraved with one simple word: decision. Atlas smiled. He had spent years searching for hidden treasure. Perhaps this was the first treasure that couldn't be held in human hands. As he reached toward the ancient stone, the entire temple awakened. Stone gears began turning. Golden light flooded the chamber. The balance slowly moved, not toward the mountain of gold, but toward that single decision. At that exact moment, Atlas realized something that would change everything he believed about money. Wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins with choice. The temple faded into darkness. When the light returned, Atlas was no longer standing among ancient ruins. He found himself in the middle of a modern financial district. People hurried across crowded sidewalks, coffee cups in one hand, phones in the other. Everyone seemed busy. Everyone seemed important. Yet no one noticed Atlas quietly observing the morning rush. Then he saw them. Two young professionals walked out of neighboring apartment buildings. They looked almost identical. Similar age, similar education, similar confidence. Both worked for the same company. Both earned exactly the same salary. Both dreamed of becoming financially successful. To anyone watching, their stories had already been written. Or so it seemed. Friday arrived. Payday. At precisely 9 a.m., both phones vibrated. Salary received. The numbers were exactly the same. For one brief moment, their financial lives were perfectly equal. The first man smiled. He had been waiting all week. A new smartphone had just been released. His favorite restaurant had announced a special tasting menu. His friends were planning a weekend getaway. Life was meant to be enjoyed, and he enjoyed every moment of it. The second man smiled too. He joined the same dinner, laughed with the same friends, enjoyed the same weekend. But before doing anything else, he quietly opened one app, his investment account. Without hesitation, he transferred a small percentage of his salary. Not half, not even 20%. Just a modest amount he had promised himself months ago. The transfer took less than 30 seconds. Then he closed the app and forgot about it. Atlas looked around. Nothing dramatic had happened. No millionaire had been created. No genius investment had been discovered. No magical opportunity had appeared. Only one tiny decision, almost invisible. The ancient balance suddenly appeared beside Atlas. On one side, a phone, fine dining, shopping bags, weekend memories. On the other, one small investment. Atlas expected the luxury to outweigh everything. Instead, the balance slowly leaned toward the investment. A quiet voice echoed through the chamber. People often choose what makes today feel richer, but wealth chooses what makes tomorrow become freer. Atlas continued watching, because he knew this wasn't the ending. It was only the first decision. Months passed, then years. From the outside, very little seemed different. Both men continued receiving promotions. Both earned higher salaries. Both worked hard. Both were respected by their colleagues. If you compared their lives through photographs, you would struggle to find any meaningful difference. But Atlas wasn't watching their photographs. He was watching their decisions. Every payday, the first man's lifestyle quietly expanded. A slightly better apartment, a newer car, more subscriptions, better restaurants, premium memberships. None of these purchases were reckless. In fact, most people would call them perfectly reasonable. Every reward felt deserved. Every upgrade felt earned. Meanwhile, the second man's lifestyle improved too. He moved into a nicer home. He replaced his old car. He traveled with his family. He wasn't refusing to enjoy life. He simply followed one rule that never changed. Invest first. Spend what remains. The rule never became exciting. It never appeared on social media. No one congratulated him for following it. It was quiet, almost boring. Yet month after month, year after year, he repeated it without exception. Atlas noticed something strange. The first man's income continued growing, but so did the amount of money required just to maintain his lifestyle. Every salary increase disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Without realizing it, his expenses had learned to chase his income. The second man's income also increased, but each raise strengthened something else first: his investments. Little by little, his portfolio began producing returns, then dividends, then opportunities. Eventually, some of his money started earning money without asking for more of his time. Atlas looked down. 2 tiny seeds had appeared beneath the footsteps of each man. The first seed grew quickly into a beautiful tree. Its branches were wide. Its leaves looked healthy. People walking past admired how impressive it appeared. The second seed grew much more slowly. For years, almost nothing seemed to happen. Some people might have assumed it had stopped growing altogether. But beneath the surface, its roots continued spreading deeper and deeper. The temple whispered once again, "The strongest foundations are always invisible." Atlas finally understood. Most people judge wealth by what they can see. The truly wealthy build what others never notice. 10 years passed. Neither man became famous. Neither appeared on magazine covers. Neither built a billion-dollar company. To the outside world, both looked successful. But success and freedom are not the same thing. The first man now earned more money than he had ever imagined. His career was thriving. His home was larger. His car was newer. His vacations were more luxurious. Yet every improvement came with another obligation. A bigger mortgage, higher insurance, larger monthly payments, more financial commitments. The more his income grew, the more expensive his life became. One evening, Atlas watched him sitting alone at his dining table. His phone displayed his monthly income, a number he once believed would solve all of his financial problems. Yet beside it, a long list of bills waited to be paid. Mortgage, car payment, insurance, credit card, utilities, school tuition, subscriptions. He wasn't poor, far from it, but he couldn't stop working. His lifestyle now depended on tomorrow's paycheck. Across the city, the second man also earned an excellent income. But something had quietly changed. His investments had been growing for years. Some produced dividends. Others increased in value. A few generated passive income every single month. For the first time, part of his monthly income no longer came from his employer. It came from assets he already owned. Atlas smiled. The ancient balance appeared once again. This time, one side held a large paycheck. The other held a small collection of assets. Slowly, the assets became heavier. Not because they were larger, but because they continued working, even while their owner slept. Then the temple spoke. The richest person is not the one who earns the most. The richest person is the one whose money no longer depends entirely upon tomorrow's work. Atlas looked toward the city skyline. Most lights were still on inside the office towers. Thousands of people were working late, chasing larger salaries, believing that income alone would eventually create wealth. Very few were asking a different question. How long could my money survive without me? Then the economy changed. Inflation climbed. Markets became volatile. Companies froze hiring. News headlines filled every screen. Uncertainty, slowdown, recession. Both men woke up to exactly the same news. Both watched the same television reports. Both heard the same warnings. Yet their reactions could not have been more different. The first man immediately opened his banking app. He calculated how many months he could continue paying his bills if his salary stopped tomorrow. 1 month, maybe 2. 3 if he cancelled almost everything. For the first time in years, his impressive income no longer made him feel secure. Atlas watched as the invisible chains around him became tighter. Not because he had failed, but because every financial decision he had made was designed to protect today's lifestyle, not tomorrow's freedom. Across the city, the second man opened a completely different app. Not his bank account, his investment portfolio. He wasn't celebrating. The market was falling. Some of his investments were worth less than they had been only weeks before. Yet he wasn't afraid. He simply smiled. Then he invested again. Atlas looked at him with curiosity. Why buy now? The temple answered before the man ever could. Because fear creates discounts. Years earlier, he had built an emergency fund. He had avoided unnecessary debt. He had invested consistently during good markets. Now, time was working for him. Instead of worrying about surviving the recession, he was quietly preparing for the recovery. Atlas suddenly understood something he had never noticed before. Financial freedom does not remove uncertainty. It changes your relationship with uncertainty. One person sees crisis and sees only danger. Another sees the same crisis and sees opportunity. The difference is rarely intelligence. It is preparation. The temple spoke one final lesson before its doors slowly began to close. Money does not eliminate risk. It gives you the ability to choose your response. Atlas looked back toward the city. Nothing about the buildings had changed. Nothing about the roads had changed. Nothing about the economy had changed. Only the decisions that had been repeated, month after month, year after year, until two people who started in exactly the same place were now living completely different lives. The temple of decisions became silent. The great balance stood perfectly still. The mountain of gold was gone. The glowing stone remained. Atlas walked toward it one last time. Carved into its surface were only 4 words. Every choice compounds forever. He stood there quietly, thinking about the 2 men. Neither had discovered a secret investment. Neither had predicted the future. Neither had earned dramatically more money. The distance between their lives had never been created by one spectacular moment. It had been created by ordinary decisions, repeated hundreds of times, almost unnoticed. Atlas finally understood why so many people fail to recognize wealth while it is being built. Because real wealth is invisible for a very long time. When someone plants a tree, nobody applauds. When someone waters it every morning, nobody notices. But years later, everyone admires the shade. Financial freedom follows the same pattern. People celebrate the millionaire. Very few admire the habits that created the millionaire. The temple walls slowly began to disappear. Beyond them, Atlas could once again see the modern city. Millions of people were beginning another ordinary day. Someone was making their first investment. Someone else was increasing unnecessary debt. Someone was reading a book instead of scrolling social media. Someone was buying an asset. Someone was buying a liability. None of those moments would appear in tomorrow's news. None would go viral. Yet every one of them would quietly influence the next 10, 20, or even 30 years. Atlas smiled. The greatest financial mystery had never been hidden inside banks, or stock markets, or ancient vaults filled with treasure. It had always been hidden inside human behavior, inside patience, inside discipline, inside the ability to delay immediate comfort for greater future freedom. As the first rays of sunlight crossed the city skyline, Atlas rolled up his old treasure map. For years he had searched for hidden gold. Today, he discovered something infinitely more valuable. The map had never been leading to treasure. It had been leading to better decisions. Because every fortune, every investment, every business, every empire begins long before money appears. It begins the moment someone chooses a better habit, a wiser decision, a longer perspective. And that choice can begin today. This is the Risk Atlas. We don't just explore where wealth exists, we explore where it begins. Mapping wealth, risk, and power.